All right, well, let's jump in. I want to thank everybody for joining us. This is the Elections Group's first conversation in our Accelerating Excellence series. I am Chris Piper, the Chief Operating Officer of the Elections Group, and I want to welcome everybody here. I'm really excited to have this conversation and to share this great program with all of you. So we're fortunate to have with us today North Carolina State Board of Elections Executive Director and a good friend of mine, Karen Bell, Brunswick County Assistant Deputy Director, Adrianne Rushton, and Tiffany Holden, the Candidacy and Canvas Program Specialist for the North Carolina State Board of Elections. And it looks like we're going to have Tiffany and Karen sharing their space today. So we're excited to have you all with us. Can't wait to get this conversation started. Today, we're going to be talking about the North Carolina Hubs and Spokes program, which is just a perfect name, I think. Hubs stands for Help Us Be Successful, and we're excited to talk about it with you. The program provides a collaborative environment for the state's election officials to identify best practices and work through shared resources. Immediately following this conversation, we will provide highlights from our implementation guide on how you will be able to implement a similar program in your state or jurisdiction. If you have questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. The chat will only be visible to the hosts. If we have time at the end, we will try to address those questions. Otherwise, we will work to get those questions answered and back to you following the webinar. So, it's 12:02. Good afternoon. Good morning to some of you. So excited to welcome you all to this conversation. First, we want to talk about who we're talking to. So if you don't mind, panelists, we're going to ask you to introduce yourself and then tell us a little bit about yourself, your role, and then we'll get into the bigger questions about the Hubs and Spokes program. So Karen, why don't we go ahead and get started with you? Introduce yourself and let everybody know who you are, what your role is there.
Sure thing, Chris. Thanks for having us, by the way. We are very excited to have worked with the Elections Group on several things now, and the support that y'all bring to election officials is just fantastic. I'm Karen Brinson-Bell. I'm the State Elections Director for North Carolina and the Chief Election Official. So the State Board of Elections, and in my role as the Executive Director, we have oversight of the 100 counties in North Carolina and all election processes and campaign finance as well. I've been in elections since 2006 in state, county, and national roles, and have been in this position since June of 2019. And I'll turn it over to Tiffany.
Good morning. Thank you, Karen. My name is Tiffany Holden. I'm a Candidacy and Canvas Program Specialist here at the State Board. First of all, I would like to thank you all for having me, and also Ms. Karen for inviting me to serve on this platform. I greatly appreciate it. But I have been serving and working in elections in several capacities for 23 years. Also came from a county working with elections, and then here I came on board at the State Board. It's been approximately 3 years now, where I'm managing and providing guidance to the counties in the areas of candidacy and canvas. So thank you for having me.
Great to have you both. Thank you. Adrianne.
Hi, I'm Adrianne Rushton. I am in Brunswick County, North Carolina. I am the Assistant Deputy Director. My tasks include absentee by mail, campaign finance, and candidate filing. I've been with the Board of Elections for going on 8 years now.
That's great. Thank you. Brunswick County is also one of my family's favorite places to vacation. They're on the beach. Emerald Isle is our where we spend a lot of summer. So great to have everyone here. So I want to dig into the program a little bit. I will say the Elections Group is just we work hard every day to provide best practices and connections for election officials. So when we heard about this program, we were ecstatic to see the great work that North Carolina was doing. Karen, can you go through with us where the idea for Hubs came from?
Well, I think that the folks here at the state board and probably counties would wish that I would not get in a car and have time to think of things. It was this little idea that I brought back, and we were, I think, actually wrapping up an election. And I kind of said, I think we need to find a way to work with the counties more. We had been talking about it, and I said, this thing in my head is a hub or gears, or just thinking about a train station or an airport terminal and how things are coming in and out, and so that's really, we started drawing it out on the board, and that's exactly what it looked like. Was almost like an airport terminal where you've got that central location, but you've got spokes coming off of it, like a wheel, however you want to visualize it. But as we talked about it, we were talking about the fact that, it's so easy to work in silos, but, the counties are the ones who are on the front lines, interacting with the voters, registering the voters, training the precinct officials. And at the state board, we're giving guidance in our role to have as many uniform processes as we can, but they're two different roles. And if we don't communicate with each other and work collaboratively, then how could we be successful? And so the image of a hub, the idea of what a hub is, that networking, that in and out communication or channels of transportation, is what formulated the idea. We realized it was also a cool acronym if we said help us be successful, us being the collective team. And I don't think any of us really realized how much focus in MPA programs and MBA programs there are right now with collaborative approaches to work. But it was just the way we knew to go about things, and we wanted to get more engaged with the counties and recognizing the different subject matter experts that could contribute to the different subject areas that we have programs and procedures to administer in our state.
That's great. The idea for, I think you hit the nail on the head. As a state election official, like a former state election official, I can certainly relate. We have a unique role of ensuring uniformity and making sure that the local jurisdictions have the tools and resources they need to be successful, but we obviously aren't on the front lines day in and day out. So their input is absolutely valid. So a great idea. I guess you should probably continue driving and thinking of some good ideas. Adrianne, when you first heard of the idea, what came to your mind? What were your initial thoughts?
My initial thoughts were, I thought it was a fantastic idea. It involves the county at the county level. With the state, obviously they have fantastic ideas. From a county perspective, working with the public and the voters, it's great that they wanted our input to kind of collaborate and make it better than what it is. So I thought it was a fantastic idea.
That's great. That's great. So along those lines, we'll start with you this time, Tiffany. Do you think this type of program is a benefit that other states and jurisdictions could use?
Oh, most definitely. This was, as Karen said, thank you, Karen, for this idea and implementing a plan. She got everyone on board with it. And so here at the state board, we are so excited to be working with the counties, as always, on making sure that we implement election processes that is uniformity, as you spoke of, and also making sure that we provide the best quality services to the voters, and additionally preserving the integrity of the election in North Carolina. That's a continued effort. So I definitely think, as we were saying, that it is definitely a well-structured program that I think we will be glad to provide this information to other states, and if they are willing to use it in their state, it just depends on their needs, but it would be definitely a good beneficial to them to make that connection and collaboration with their counties.
The good news is we've got the case study and we've got the implementation guide, which I'll talk about later. So yeah, absolutely. There's already something there that we can take directly to those who are interested. Adrianne, What do you think?
I absolutely believe that this program would benefit other states and jurisdictions, collaborating with election officials about a task that you're passionate about and have invested so much of yourself in is not only rewarding, but it makes you feel like a fundamental part of the process. You know, the free sharing, the relationships built with the other counties and the folks that work in the same tasks as you, it's unparalleled.
That's great. I think that's a really important point. So I want to underline what you said, because I think there's an even larger point behind all those words too, which is when you have that kind of collaboration, would you all agree that that just it benefits the entire election administration for the state overall, correct?
Absolutely. Chris, one of the things I think of why other states and jurisdictions should adopt such an approach is because you don't know where those best practices are until you start having the conversations. We knew, there's some standout counties that we would hear from frequently, and we started having this habit of just going to them. Well, at some point you overwork those counties, and you also, folks who are more, tend to be in the shadows and don't speak up are getting overlooked. And yet they have incredible best practices. I was at a district meeting and realized that, one of our most skilled folks in our SEAM system, our state election information management system, our software, modules, is a very shy individual. And so folks didn't realize all the contributions she could bring to it. And so in our structure, we make sure that large counties are represented, small counties, folks with a lot of experience, some who have not as much experience, so that varying ideas are coming to the table. So often, you also can't have those best practices or the new ideas if the same people are coming to the table or if they're all like-minded, and we kind of force that to not be the case. The other thing that I think, particularly state officials or those who have to lead an agency, be a county office even, can think about is how this helps increase your bandwidth. Mm-hmm. Tiffany is one person handling two major processes within election administration, and I can't give her any more staff. We're tapped out, but she has this group in her hub now, or actually she has two hubs to lead, but in the candidacy group, she's got other subject matter experts. So it's not all on her shoulders. She has someone else who she can put that idea out there and they can help it bloom. And then help her in writing it and proofing it and making sure that, the steps that one county does are the same steps that another county does, so that we could have better uniformity too. And, I hope that while initially it probably added to her plate to get that hub up and running, I hope that it's been a more efficient process and a useful process.
Definitely.
Absolutely. Great stuff. Thank you. So it's all been, sunshine and roses to this point, but obviously this was not, this couldn't have gone just completely smooth. What would you say, we'll start with you, Tiffany, the biggest learning curves that you encountered along the way as you were setting this Hubs and Spokes program up?
Well, as I stated, for the program, when we initially started, it was well developed, well structured. But again, until you actually launch something, you don't know if it's going to work or not. And so when we initially met, just trying and frequently meeting with the counties, that's when you really find out this is beneficial, this is working. And as Karen said, with the great idea that she had of doing it, got us all on board. And, before we even launched the program, we sat down and just said, okay, what hubs do we need? And then we even implemented a charter for the hub. So, again, we have streamlined it well enough where we are finding it is working. We are trying to providing good beneficial election processes that all 100 counties can use. And again, it's all about uniformity and preserving the integrity of the election, and additionally making sure that we provide the quality service to the voters out there. So it's definitely just again, the biggest learning curve is just knowing whether or not it was going to work, but it has successfully worked for us, and I'm glad to announce that, and I'm glad to be a part of it. So thank you, Karen.
I wanted to highlight that charter part because I think that that's a really big, that's a hub of the H.U.B.S program, right? It formalizes the structure, and we know that there's we all experience turnover in our offices, but we also see our turnover at the top in state jurisdictions and even local jurisdictions. So to have that formalized charter process, I think, is such a really key point, because then it can pass on from staff to staff, from leadership to leadership. So Adrianne, what about you? What do you think your biggest learning curve was during the initial process?
I would say that the biggest learning curve was the time. So at a county level, the time that you need to put into this sometimes can be greater than what you originally anticipated. Fortunately, our leader, Allison Blackman, from the State Board of Elections, she was really efficient in creating sub-hubs. So off the bat, when you realize the time that it's going to take to commit to this program, she created sub-hubs. And so you would kind of join a sub-hub, and then that way it would reduce a little bit of the time required to make the program successful. But at the same time, it was learning your way through it. So I would say definitely the time that it takes to commit to this program.
Would you say at the end of the day, when it's the initial time commitment, but when all is said and done, would you say the overall result is less time?
Yes, I would. I absolutely would. Because once you get through, you have this grandiose plan, and then when you make it more reasonable and feasible and kind of work, Allison would start off with an agenda, and then we'd work off of our agenda. And if there's anything we didn't get to, we'd carry it over to the next agenda. So, with time, I think that there was a lot of improvement.
Great. That's awesome. So Karen, let's go back to 2019, if you can. You're driving in your car and having these thoughts. And 2023, Karen, comes flying in as you're having these thoughts about the Hubs and Spokes program. What would your advice to yourself be when going about setting this up? What would you do? What would your number 1, 2, 3 pieces of advice be?
I will not be all sunshine and roses, Chris. We have had some learning curves. Matter of fact, our charter happened after a year and a half of H.U.B.S. We had an initial planning committee who mapped out how we were going to launch this, because I can't do it by myself. There's learning curve 1, and things I would tell myself, and I didn't try to, but I knew to engage others. And our agency's deputy director, Trina Parker-Velez, really is the one who guides it now. I'm in an advisory capacity. We have continued the steering committee, which is really necessary so that you can just give that support structure. And that's another thing that we learned through it. We gave what we thought were the toolbox of tools to launch these different hubs. And we actually have 13 different hubs. So some of them are internal, but most of them are connected to the counties in the different subject areas. But just handing them that and expecting them to flourish is something that we've learned a few lessons about. We have a gifted leader in Tiffany. Adrianne mentioned Allison. Both of them have led efforts before, but we had some people that we assigned as leaders to hubs who have always had to work in silos, not intentionally, but just by the nature of their work. And suddenly we were asking them to lead and delegate and do a collective effort. And so that's something that we've realized, that we need to be able to coach folks through what that looks like, and recognizing when we need to bring in the input. And so, there's been a few hubs that have not flourished as much. We've also learned that it was really easy to communicate with the individual hubs, but finding ways to be able to communicate that back out to the whole. So we have twice a month, we do what we call huddles. They're basically statewide staff meetings and trainings. And we've committed now that every quarter we're going to give a hubs update, so that if you're not part of a candidacy hub, you know what's going on in that group, and we can report out as to what's going on with voting systems, or absentee by mail or in-person voting, whatever it might be. So those are a few of the learning curves. I think keeping that structure. Also, one other thing I just thought about, and we've really worked at this from the get-go, but we continue to try to refine it, having the managers involved. We can't send Tiffany off to do all these things and her supervisor be still assigning her more and more and more work without realizing what she's already dedicated to, and vice versa, being mindful not to put so much on a hub that the counties can't get their work done, or the person leading it can't get their work done.
That's fantastic. So Tiffany, what about you? You're going back to 2019, Tiffany. Or let's actually switch it a little bit for you. So a state comes to you and says, all right, we're going to set this up. What would the number one or two pieces of advice that you'd want to give that state?
I would give them just making sure that they thought out, for as making sure that they know what the mission is. First, you need to define your mission, define your goals, and what the vision is. Because once you determine and establish that, then everything else will be at ease. Also, to make sure that they welcome all the county staff members. You have a diverse of experience and knowledge, so definitely make sure that they are, they welcome their feedback that they receive for election processes. And also just making sure that you, again, have a well-structured program that you will be able to explain and that they will be able to go along with.
Awesome. So Adrianne, now a local jurisdiction in another county says, another state comes up to you and says, my crazy state election director has come up with this H.U.B.S idea. I understand you guys are doing stuff. And I mean that as a joke, obviously, but they want to set something up. So what would your advice to a local jurisdiction be if they're looking to set up a similar program?
I would say that key leadership, as Karen expressed, is paramount, making sure that they have the support that they need, that they know what's expected, but also having team members that want to collaborate and are forthcoming with ideas. I think the concept itself is fantastic, but you want to have participation from everyone, and not everyone can participate every single meeting, but having that dialogue with your group it's really important. So, follow through, consistent participation, and a feasible goal. Those would be the things that I would say.
That's great. Thank you. So what about it? Then we'll stick with you, Adrianne. What about H.U.B.S? Is still going back to 2019 and looking forward to today. What was it that has surprised you the most out of the experience that you've had with the H.U.B.S program?
I would say what surprised me the most is the diversity in each county's process for what they do. So, all counties receive the same guidance, but still manage things a bit differently. So I would say that that's probably what surprised me the most.
Yeah. And I think it underscores what Karen and Tiffany were talking about earlier, which is the diversity in each H.U.B.S in each spoke, right? It's really important that you have the large, the medium, the small, the rural, the suburban, the urban, various jurisdictions all being represented, so that every perspective is taken into account. So all are most benefited from it. So what about you, Tiffany? What was your biggest surprise through the whole process?
Again, as Adrianne was saying, I think it was just more of like not the uniformity. A lot of times, we do provide the guidance to the counties, but there's, some we're not using the same processes. I mean, granted, they were using in compliance with the North Carolina General Statutes and Administrative Codes and any information that we provide to them. But again, there was, things that they were doing that some other counties weren't doing. So it was very beneficial to obtain that knowledge from them so that we could provide those tidbits to the other counties. And maybe if they would like to use that, they can do so.
Great. And another underline for the continuity, right? So as people are learning these processes and are learning from others and having that conversation, you can see that not only uniformity, but continuity through the different organizational changes that occur in every jurisdiction. So, all right, Karen, diversity has been taken, right? We've already got that. What is something else that has been surprising to you through the process?
I was excited to see how much enthusiasm there was by the counties from the get-go. But what surprised me, and I hate that I am surprised, but knowing that we hit a few bumps in the road, to come back, and we've now established that they only have to serve 2-year terms and they can rotate off and go into another hub. When we asked for participants this year, we actually got more people willing to participate than our first go round. And it's a pleasant surprise. It's the surprise I hoped for, but you just never know. And just to have that affirmation that they see the benefit, that we're all benefiting from this process, has really been a pleasant surprise.
That's great. And just a testament to the success of the program, because it's the old restaurant analogy, right? You please one customer, they're going to tell 3. So I think that it shows that the program is working, the people in the local jurisdictions are excited, and so more and more want to participate and have their voice heard and see the success of the entire state, which is fantastic. So sticking with you, Karen, what tips would you give to another state election director to generate interest and buy-in from the counties, at least in the initial stages?
Don't just throw this out there. There were building blocks to us being able to do this. From the day I came in, I've heard Tiffany reference our customers. And from the day I came into this role, I had a staff meeting with the folks here at the agency, and I said, we have 2 customers. 1 are the voters, but 2, that's the counties. We are here to support their efforts and their success. And they are also our team members, and that's a hard thing to balance. But that was the other thing. From the very first conference that I presided over, we launched the hashtag Team 101. We say it to each other. We consider ourselves a team of 101, one state board of elections and 100 counties working together in our roles. And because that's the approach that I've asked everyone to take, it's resonated. When we launched H.U.B.S, I think that just recommitted us to that belief and the value that we hold in our relationship with the counties and what they bring to the table, and helping them to see what we try to bring to the table for them. And so that would probably be the thing that folks need to realize is, if you just show up at a state conference or on a Zoom meeting one day and say, hey, we're going to do H.U.B.S, you may not get the buy-in if you don't see that pattern of building in that level of support.
Great. Yeah, I think that's a really important point. Building in over time and getting the feedback and the buy-in, really important. How about you, Adrianne? What would you agree with that? And is there anything you'd like to add?
I would just add, so what enticed me to participate was the knowledge I had to offer about absentee by mail and being part of the decision-making before it lands at the county level, because I have opinions. So I really think that probably feeds into why Karen is seeing such a pickup. And I think folks have opinions, and they probably have a lot to bring to the table, especially seeing it every single day. So I think that's fantastic. But that would be my reason.
Oh, absolutely. So along those lines, would you say that potentially part of the interest, the gaining of the interest, is not just the opinions, but they're seeing the value that's coming from the work that the hubs and spokes are doing?
I would hope so. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I would absolutely hope so. I mean, you're seeing, especially for, again, I can speak to absentee by mail because that's the hub that I'm in, but the conversation that we have, the dialogue, again, free speaking, it's incredibly helpful when you learn about processes. When I was talking earlier about being surprised about the difference in processes, I hear from another county that they're using a colored bin to store certain things. It's easy. So green is approved, something so simple that you pick up from another county that you can take away and make things easier in your county. It's a fantastic collaboration.
That's great. That's exactly what I think of a program like this, is just when you talk about collaboration, but the sharing of ideas, it's really, really awesome. Tiffany, what about you? Any advice on generating interest or the buy-in?
I definitely think that, in order to get more participation, you should always highlight your results, what are the outcomes of the hubs? And we do that every chance the week opportunity that we get is in our huddles. We also highlight what the product was, for candidacy. We let them know, hey, we have implemented or established a municipal candidate guide or any other guidance. So I think the most important thing is making sure that you are giving feedback to the counties, so then you can gain more participation from the counties that are not participating.
Excellent.
Chris,
Go
I
ahead.
think that's a great point. And one other thing I would add, I thought about is, we had to have buy-in here at the agency. I needed Tiffany to know that I wasn't asking there to be a candidacy hub or a candidacy hub or Canvas hub because she wasn't doing a good job. I wanted her to know that we were launching this because I wanted to ensure, and we all, not just me, it's not about me, it's the agency, wanted her to have the tools and resources and support that we could give her. There's only so much budget and there's only so much bandwidth, but that this wasn't in any way saying that Tiffany wasn't doing a good job in her subject areas or for any of the other hub leaders. This was saying, hey, we see you as the leader to this subject matter. Now collect the best practices and the knowledge and put forward guides and checklists and manuals and things that will be as uniform as we can, but share those processes and procedures statewide so we can share those best practices. I hope that was
great.
It was. It was.
Well, I think that's an incredibly important point, because while this is a collaboration with the local jurisdictions, it's ultimately about getting your team on board at the state level, right? And making sure so it's getting them to see the value in how this is going to improve things overall. And I think that's a really important point. So we've talked about getting the counties on board. And we've talked a little bit about the well-defined program structure. Can we dig into that a little bit more? We have the charter. Would you mind? We don't have to go line by line, but what are the important parts of the charter that you see are real critical to the success of the program? And we'll go ahead and start with you, Karen.
So in our charter, and even before we established our charter, we did a whole lot of brainstorming over what are the subject areas, where do we need collaborative, a collaborative work approach. And so we defined 13 different hubs. Initially, I think we only had 11, and we've added 2 that are more internal around HR and our intake process. But, for us, we could map out candidacy canvas, absentee by mail, voting systems, geocode jurisdictions, campaign finance. I'm sorry that I'm forgetting some of them at the moment, but voter registration, thank you, in-person voting. And now I really am going to draw a blank and insult somebody, but you kind of get the idea that those are the programs, those are the election administration processes. And as I said, we have campaign finance under this agency and at the county level in our state. So, but what we also wanted to structure was identifying, one, who leads that group, because that would help communication within our agency. For so long, we would say, oh, I don't know who covers that, so let me send out this email blast and see who jumps at it. Well, they don't have to think about that anymore. So when our attorneys need to have information on the Canvas process or pushing that guidance out, they work with Tiffany and they know who that is. So we've also established who on our legal team works with which hub. So that's clearly defined, and it helps them to separate out their work. Just the same, we have field support folks in North Carolina. We call them our security and support technicians. And there's an SST that's assigned with each hub. So those are the spokes that you talk about. Here's the central idea, and who branches off and creates that hub or that wheel. And then we do, of course, have the counties, and they're the other spokes. And they came about through their their interest surveys. And then the first go around, we did an actual draft, so that the leaders could feel like they had more of a say and could have some fun with it. And so, we really did randomize, and, first round draft pick for candidacy goes to, and they could see, and we also wouldn't let them duplicate. So as much as we know, Adrianne has so much wealth of knowledge in more than one subject area, we, one, don't want to tax her time too much, but two, we want to spread the knowledge. So she serves on one hub and one hub only, and there can't be someone else from Brunswick County on that hub. So that's how we make sure we've got that diversity built in as well. The steering committee is there to help coach and define what the agency priorities are, so that the hubs aren't off on tangents, working on something that's a lot of fun, but not what we need right now because of whatever court case may have come down or new legislation or something like that, that we need to focus in on and revise a form or develop processes and procedures. And then that steering committee can also, when we do have vacancies, we didn't have a good stopgap for that. We just wound up with some hubs that didn't have a lot of folks because people had left, working in elections or retired, whatever it might have been. And so now we've got a process in place that we've defined in our charter on how to fill vacancies.
Yeah, that's great. So Adrianne, from the county perspective, from the local jurisdiction perspective, how did having the charter play into the decision making or the usefulness of the program? I mean, can you give us some thoughts about if without the charter versus with the charter, how would it have been different for you as you were considering your level of effort or your participation in this program?
I don't know that I can speak as much to the charter piece. I only know the pieces that I know. So as Karen expressed, the interest survey, I want to say the first go around, and Karen, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that it was asked of our directors who they would recommend for a particular hub. So our director approached us in our office about what hub we'd be interested in participating in. And so then that was the first time, whereas this time the staff, we were able to express interest in what hubs we'd be interested in participating in. I was selected actually for my second year term in the absentee by mail. So I'm one of two in my hub that is a returning absentee by mail hub member. So that's really exciting also when you have somebody that you've worked with previously and get to continue to work with. So I, as far as that's really all I can speak to as far as the charter. Yeah.
But no,
Adrianne knows she doesn't get to serve on that hub in her next term. We
I
term
do,
limit.
but I feel fairly certain what hub I'd move on to next. So yeah.
But yeah, now knowing the structure, it does give you an opportunity to understand exactly how the program is going to work and that it's going to continue, right? So
yes.
That's great. So Tiffany, from the employee perspective, the state agency employee perspective, what were your thoughts about having the well-defined program structure and how that might have been helpful as you were setting this program up?
I loved it. And when Karen initially, brought it to our attention and discussed the plans with us, I thought it was a great idea. Even with the Candidacy hubs, it definitely was well defined for us, what was our expectation, what was the mission, and it definitely worked. Very beneficial to us as an agency and also for the counties as well, that it was well defined, that we were able to discuss, the election processes and see whether or not there were needed clarity on some stuff or whether or not there was, wasn't any processes, that wasn't there before that we need to implement. So it was definitely beneficial, and I'm so happy to be a part of this program and look forward to continue working in this area.
Oh, that's great. That's awesome. So I'm almost finished with all my questions. Before I jump to kind of the summary and give you all a chance for a final word, we did have a question in the chat. It asked how many hubs there are. I think you said 13. A few of those are just internal, and the others are for the counties. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and you tried to name them all off, but one of the specific questions was social media communications. I didn't hear that as one of the hubs. So I'm going to throw that out with the idea and just put you get your thinking caps on. What is the future of the Hubs and Spokes program? But Karen, I'll start with you. Is there a social media communications hub or program? And then lastly, where do you see the program a year or 2 years from now?
So there sort of is a comms, and then there's a sort of a role for comms, a spoke. With our comms team is not as large as it used to be. We've gone through some reduction here at the agency, so that's been another need for the hubs. But we identified, the point of contact within our comms team who works with each hub. So again, information in, information out. When Tiffany, in the hub come up with a product or, some calendar dates that need to be published, she knows who her point of contact is with our comms team to get that published on the website. So those are the kind of things that the hubs work through, realizing that these changes affect which areas, and they can communicate that back out to their point of contact. So the comms team is actively engaged as at least a point of contact with every one of the hubs. But we have paired comms and outreach together. We don't have a dedicated outreach team in our agency. So a lot of what we do from an outreach standpoint is through social media and our voter confidence campaign and materials. And so that's why we have that hub partnered together. And so, in that sense, there's a central idea and a spoke that are both comms at that point, but I guess they can talk to themselves. But they do have county involvement. We're actually doing new director training right now, and we heard somebody who was doing some great things, even in a new role with a county office, and we were making sure that she's on the comms outreach hub.
Awesome. Well, okay.
What was your next question? I got focused.
So the next question is what your vision or what you see, what you predict for the Hubs and Spokes program a year from now. Is it going to coast along because it's going so great, or are there thoughts, or do you see an expansion? Whatever you're thinking about, we'd love to hear about the future of the Hubs and Spokes program. And I'd love to hear everybody's thoughts on this question before we wrap up.
Well, my vision for it is, for starter, many people wouldn't realize, but as executive director, I'm an appointed position. And so, I don't know what my tenure is in this role, though I would love, this is my dream job. I hope I can continue to serve for a long time. But the importance to me is, and the reason why I stepped into the advisory role instead of being on the steering committee, is because this should outlive me. Just because I may have had this bizarre little idea come up in my head while I was driving down the interstate doesn't mean that when my time's up, that this isn't the way that the agency can still function. So that's what we've tried to do, is to really lay a groundwork and a foundation that can outlast any one person. So that's probably my biggest hope and future look. But I will say we also operate in this agency and as a team of 101 in a continuous improvement model. We are constantly doing lessons learned and asking for input and feedback, and even when something has been successful, helping us be successful, Hubs, we still say, that worked great. How can we replicate that? How can we build upon that? And I think just, an indication that we went back and actually established a charter after we had launched the program shows how we'll continue to do that and gain the county feedback. We did lessons learned so that we would, through a survey, so that we would know whether they thought this was worth continuing, what hubs we should have, and we'll continue to look at that. And I can foresee, we've talked at times, North Carolina is still involved in some court cases around voter ID. Is that its own hub? It may be initially, but then it may fold into, the other hubs, because it's going to be, if implemented, it's part of the day-to-day operations or administration. So that's how we can see, the hubs ebbing and flowing too.
So yeah, flexible as new challenges come up, and then as those challenges get absorbed into other daily routines. Absolutely. That's great. Appreciate that. Tiffany, thoughts on the future of hubs?
I would definitely think this would be beneficial and looking forward to and hoping that these hubs would continue, the hub programs would continue. And I even envision that it would be more hubs. I mean, we are very receptive to feedback that we receive, from the counties. And so if they see a need for, additional hubs to be, created, definitely, I think, we'll definitely implement those hubs.
That's awesome. And so as a former state election director, I want to say the reason I think this program is so great is because the state, as I mentioned at the top, cannot be successful without the localities being successful. And it really is a collaborative process. I also know as a state election official that I am in awe daily of the amount of work and knowledge that's out in the local election field. So that's why for the last question here, and before we go to the summary, I want to turn it over to Adrianne. Thank you for your service at the local level. Of course, thank you, Karen and Tiffany, for all that you do, but really your input, your value to this program is absolutely paramount. So thank you for that. Thinking about the future, give you the last word on that one.
Thank you. Thank you all. I'd say as far as the future, our hub has been focused on enhancements with our software, things that can work better for the counties as a whole. And then also an absentee manual, so something more concrete. And so our hub leader, Allison Blackman, has actually already put out some SMART goals for the 2 returning absentee hub members. So I think that it's just got a great future in front of it, just, as previously stated by Karen and Tiffany, just to keep improving, just to keep it going.
That's great. Well, thank you for that. So before we wrap up, are there anything that we didn't cover today? Is there anything that we didn't cover today? Any thoughts that you want to leave the group that's on the call here today? Adrianne, you want to start us off? Is there anything you want to add?
No, I don't want to start us off. No, I mean, really, there's nothing more for me to add. I am excited to be included in the hub that I am in. And then obviously, as Karen previously stated with the huddle, getting to hear the feedback from the others, which I really do appreciate and enjoy, even if it's not my specific task. It's nice to hear what's being worked on. So I find that incredibly encouraging and promising. So that's
awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I meant to highlight that, Karen, what you said earlier, that survey out to the jurisdictions and the participants about how to continuously improve it. That constant feedback loop, it just is obviously demonstrated in the Hubs program, but it's so important that you're actually keeping that together. So I appreciated you bringing that up. Tiffany?
I would just like to extend my appreciation to the counties for their involvement and collaborating with us. Thank you all so much. And as Karen has said, they are the first line of out there working with the elections and we're conducting elections and also providing the best quality to the voters. So I just want to say kudos to all of the county directors and your collaboration with us. We do appreciate it. Thank you.
That's awesome. And Karen, I guess we'll get you the final word. Well, I get the final word, but you can have
Of course you do. I think, what we haven't touched on that I would guide folks to do is, I think it may seem like you make yourself very vulnerable at the state level to work collaboratively. There probably is some hesitation. I think that we're often ingrained to believe that the state is supposed to know it all, and we want to have that authoritative final word or something like that. I don't operate that way, but having others to have that vulnerability of putting yourself out there in front of the counties, who can either they can be your biggest cheerleader or they can be the biggest critic, and and saying, we don't know, we need your input, is something that you have to be willing to put, make yourself vulnerable to that. And you have to realize that working collaboratively may not be people on board with your idea. And that's hard for folks sometimes. If we wanted all yes people, we'd be pretty stagnant and we wouldn't have that improvement, that continuous improvement. But by putting it in front of the counties, it's amazing the new ideas that have come about. And folks getting on board with the fact that what they put out as the idea wasn't the one that was embraced. But that's part of working collaboratively and finding new direction. And so I hope that people will take that leap and be vulnerable to that situation, because I think the reward is just tremendous.
Well, that's a fantastic point to end on. And I want to thank all three of you for being here, being willing to engage in this conversation, but mostly for your collaboration, your willingness to just move the needle of election administration forward through this hard work and this great program. All election officials, I'm always in awe of working at the state, working closely with the local election officials. I hope you guys at the end of the day, even on a bad day, can pat yourselves on the back for the great work you're doing. And I certainly thank you. And I know we all on the call do as well. So in closing, we hope everybody enjoyed this conversation. We have recorded this. We'll be putting that up for view later. So if there's anything you missed, or please be willing and happy to share it out when so others can learn about this amazing program. So in addition to the case study we did on the Help Us Be Successful program, there's a great case study. Everything we covered here and more is covered in that case study. So you can learn even more about the program, and we encourage you to go to our website to check that out. But we also created an implementation guide. So we took the great work that North Carolina has done to create this program, the lessons learned, the great successes, and we created this implementation guide, which you should see in our chat here shortly, if not already. And that is a great little handbook that you can use to plan out your 3 steps. First, to plan your program, to organize the work groups, and to maintain your success going forward. So please contact us if you're interested in having our team work with you to set up a program like this. Obviously, we've got great relationships with the folks in North Carolina, but we can assist you in creating a program that will be just as successful, just as maintained for the long haul as North Carolina's. The elections group also supports election officials in a variety of ways. We encourage you to check out our website. We have a bunch of free resources available for download. And if you have any questions or would like to discuss with us on any of those topics and more, please reach out. Thank you again, all 3 of you, Tiffany, Adrianne, Karen. It was a great conversation. There's so much that we learned today, and I look forward to talking to you all about this again in the future. Speaking of the future, on February 21st, our second conversation in this series of Accelerating Excellence, we will be talking with California election officials on a great program that they put together, collaborating on really successful communications in the lead up to the 2022 election. So be on the lookout for that invitation. We hope you can join us then. And again, thank you all. Have a wonderful rest of your Tuesday, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you. Bye.